Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov. This is Rabbi Kramer filling in for Rabbi Bukit for today's Chitas. We'll start off with the Chumash. It's a wonderful day. It's the second day of Av. We are starting a new book and a new parsha. We're going to start with Parshat Devarim. So Eila hadvarim asher dibar Moshe al kol Yisrael be'evra Yarden b'midbar ba'arava mol suf ben paran uvein teifel v'lavan b'chatzeres v'di zahav. These are the words which Moshe spoke to all of Israel on the side of the Jordan in the desert, in the plains opposite the Red Sea, between Paran and Tofel and Lavan and Chatzerot and Dizav. Let's look at what Rashi has to say to dissect this first verse. So these are the words, Eila Hadvarim. These are words of rebuke. Therefore, Moshe says all the different places. He doesn't actually say what happened in each of these places, but each of these places that are in the Pasuk represents something that the Jewish people did, that they had a transgression. But he mentions the names of the places out of respect for the Jewish people. He doesn't say exactly what took place in each of the places. But we're going to go through each of them and see what happened there. El Kol Yisrael, what does it mean to all of Israel? He rebuked all the children of Israel, all when they were all together. He didn't let any of them to be absent. If there were some that were in the marketplace, those people might say, you heard what Moshe, the son of Amram, told you guys, and you didn't respond back to him. So he waited till everyone was together. Everyone could hear his rebuke. And if anybody has anything to answer, they can answer them. They can answer Moshe then. So let's go. Bamidbar. The first thing it says is in the desert. But they weren't actually in the desert at that time. At that time, they were in the plains of Moab. What is Bamidbar, in the desert? That's the first thing that Moshe is rebuking them for. When they were in the desert and they said, if only we had died and you didn't take us into the desert, if only we had died in Egypt. So that's the first thing. Ba'arava, in the plains. That is talking about when they sinned by Baal Pa'or in the plains of Moab. Mol Suf, opposite the Red Sea. That's a known one. When they were opposite the Red Sea, when they arrived at the Red Sea, they said, is it because there's no graves in Egypt that you have taken us to die in the desert? So that was another time that the Jewish people transgressed. Between Paran and Tofel and Lavan, actually, Rabbi Yochanan said in the Gemara that we reviewed the entire Torah and we did not find any place named Tofel or Lavan. What do those things mean, Tofel and Lavan? Tofel refers to foolishness. Lavan, about the white, which was the man. The man was white. And this denotes the complaining of the Jewish people about the man. V'chatzerot, Rashi continuing, this was Korach, the rebellion of Korach. Another explanation says that it had to do with Miriam, what they learned, the slander by Miriam in Chatzerot. So one of those two was Moshe was referring to when he was rebuking the Jewish people. The Di Zahav, which literally means enough gold, he was talking about the golden calf. So Moshe just says the places, but that's what he's referring to, all the different times that the Jewish people transgressed. Let's go to verse number 2. It is 11-day journey from Chorev by way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. And Rashi explains, why is he mentioning that it was an 11-day journey? Because actually he was highlighting the fact that the Jewish people did it in 3 days. You make the calculation, they stayed for 30 days in one place, and they had 7 days that they had to wait in Chatzeros for Miriam, as Miriam was confined as a Metzora. And therefore, we find that their entire journey from Chorev to Kadesh Barnea was only 3 days. And it's really an 11-day journey. So Moshe's highlighting all as part of the rebuke, saying how great Hashem, what great miracles Hashem did for you. It's an 11-day journey and you did it in 3 days. Vayihi bar-40 shana b'ashtei-asar chodesh be'echad hachodesh diber Moshe al bnei Yisrael k'chol asher tziva Hashem ha'yisei aleim. It came to pass, it's the 40th year in the 11th month, on the first of the month, that Moshe speaks to the Yidden according to all that Hashem has commanded him regarding them. Why is it giving all these details? The 40th year, the 11th month. This Rashi right away says, this teaches us that he rebuked them shortly before his passing. Whom did he learn to do this? He learned it from Yaakov. Yaakov did the same thing before his passing. He gave rebukes to Ruvain for things that he did. So that's where Moshe learned that before his passing is a time to give rebukes. Verse number 4. After he had smitten Sichain, the king of Amori, who dwelt in Cheshbon, this is saying Moshe rebuked. Rashi right away says, I'm sorry to translate, and also so this is after he killed Sichain, the king of the Amoris, who dwelt in Cheshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who dwelt in Ashtaroth Edrei. So why is it saying this? Rashi says this is saying this is already after he's already done, to give context that he's already destroyed the enemies. Now he's giving them, if he hadn't done this, it would be like, okay, what have you done for us recently, Moshe, that you're giving us all this rebuke? Moshe had just accomplished getting rid of all the Jews' enemies, and now he's got some credibility, if you want to say, to rebuke the Jewish people. Sichain, why does that to say Sichain, who dwelt in Cheshbon? Because even Sichon Rashi says, even Sichon himself was extremely powerful. But besides for that, he lived in the city of Cheshbon, which was a powerful city. So it was a powerful king and a powerful city. And the same thing is Og, who dwelt in Ashtaroth Edrei. Og himself was extremely powerful. Just saying Og would have been enough. But Og, and also he was in a city that was really powerful. What is Ashtaroth Edrei? The next Rashi? Rashi says it's an expression denoting sharp cliffs and strengths. And this is the same Ashtaroth Karnaim, where the giants were. So this is basically, verse number 4 says this is after Moshe conquered the enemies of the Jewish people. So Be'ever Ayarden Be'eretz Moav Hayol Moshe Be'er as a Torah Azais Lamer. On that side of the Jordan, in the land of Moav, Moshe commences and explains the law, saying, Rashi explained the law. He explained it to them in 70 languages. Or another explanation says that he gave them 70 interpretations to every passage. Verse number 6. Hashem Elokeinu diber Eleinu b'chorev leimar rav lochem sheves b'har hazeh. Hashem spoke to us in Chorev, saying, you have dwelt long enough at this mountain. What is Rashi saying? There's an Agadic explanation. And this is it. I have given you much greatness and reward for your having dwelt at this mountain. You made the Mishkan, the Menorah, and the other furnishings. You received the Torah. You appointed a Sanhedrin for yourself, and captains over thousands and captains over hundreds. So much has happened at this mountain. Penu usu'u lachem. Turn and journey. Bo har ha'mori ve'el kol shchenav ba'arava ba'haru ba'shvela ba'negav ba'choif Hayom Eretz HaKnani v'Alavonin ad Nahar Hangadol Nahar Paras. Come to the mount of the Amorites and to all its neighboring places, in the plains and on the mountains, in the lowland, in the south, and the seashore, the land of the Canaanites and to Lebanon, until the great river, the Euphrates. Let's go to the Rashi that says until the great river of the Euphrates. Why is it called the great river? Since the Euphrates is mentioned in association with the land of Israel, that's why it's called great. A popular parable says a king's servant is a king. Associate yourself with a ruler and people will bow down to you. Just by the fact that you may have dealings, or you are a servant, or you're associated with royalty, makes you royalty as well. So the Euphrates was called the Great Euphrates, not because necessarily it was so great, but just because it's in association. It was said in association with the land of Eretz Yisrael. All right, verse number 8. Re'ei nasati lifnechem es haaretz. See, I have set the land before you. Bo'u urshu es haaretz asar nishbad in Hashem el aveiseichem la'Avram liYitzchak liYaakov losis lehem lazar machareim. Come possess the land which Hashem swore to your forefathers, to Avram, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, and to give to their descendants after them. Let's look at Rashi. Re'ei nasati. Behold, I have set the land before you. With your own eyes, you can see this. This is not hearsay. You can see the land before you. Bo'u urshu. Go in and possess the land. No one will contest the matter. You will not need to go to war. If the Yidden did not send spies, they would have not had to use any weapons of war. They would have been able to conquer the land swiftly. Instead, they did have to conquer the land with war, with Yeshua, and eventually they will conquer the land of Eretz Yisrael. Lavei to your forefathers. So why did it have to say Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? We know who our forefathers are. Ella, Abraham Kedai Latzmai. The reason for this is, Rashi says, is because it says Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Really, Avram himself is good enough to have to be a melamed chus, to be a light that we should be able to get the land of Israel. Even Yitzchak himself would have been enough. Even Yaakov himself would have been enough, but all three together for sure. Verse number 9. And I said to you at that time, saying, I cannot carry you alone. This is Moshe talking. What does it mean that he could not carry them alone? Is it possible that Moshe, this is Rashi, could not judge the Yidden? The man who brought them out of Mitzrayim, split the sea, brought down the man, caused the quails to fly, could not judge them? Rather, what was he saying? Right to the next pasuk. The next pasuk where it says, Hashem has multiplied you. He has made you superior and elevated, higher than your judges. He took the punishment away from you and imposed it upon the judges in cases where they could have prevented your wrongdoing and did not. And we see the same thing. Shlomo HaMelech made a similar statement saying that who is able to judge you great people? Basically, not just has Hashem, Moshe felt like the Yidden have been so uplifted that he couldn't judge them himself. Verse number 10. Hashem Elohechem hir be'eschem v'hinichem hayom kichoich ve'ashamayim l'rayv. The Lord Hashem has multiplied you, and behold, you are today as the stars of the heavens in abundance. So Rashi says, were they actually as many as the stars of the heavens? There were only 600,000. What does it mean that you're so multiplied today? It means, behold, you are compared to the sun, signifying that you will exist forever, as do the sun, the moon, and the stars. That's what Sifri explains. That's what it means that you've multiplied. It's that you've become so strong like the sun. Hashem Elokei Aveseichem Yosef, verse number 11. Hashem Elokei Aveseichem Yosef Aleichem Kachem Ele Pa'amim Vayvarch Eschem Kasher Dibur Lachem. May Hashem, the God of your forefathers, add to you 1,000-fold, as many as you are, and may He bless you as He spoke concerning you. All right, let us go to the Tanya. Okay, we're in Igeres HaTshuva. Actually, this is the last chapter of Igeres HaTshuva. We're talking about how remembering your past sins, it's a balancing act, because the whole idea is that you should serve Hashem with joy. So if that should not bring you to sadness, and it shouldn't bring you to depression and shame, because then you can't do that cardinal rule of serving Hashem with joy. So you have to, what it means to I guess we're going to talk in this today, what it means to recall your past deeds. You have to do them from a distance, to remember your past misdeeds in a way that it should humble you, but not in a way that it should bring you down. So let's go right into the Tanya to explain it. The reason for joy in the suffering of the body is that it is great and potent favor for the sinning soul, to cleanse it in this world, to spare it from being scoured in Gehenna. So an advantage of getting pain and suffering in this world is that it exempts you, or you don't have to have that pain in Gehenna. And in the brackets, the Alter Rebbe says this is particularly true in our generations where we can't do the fasts, and the fasts is a good way of cleansing the soul and rescuing it from the cleansing that we're going to have to do in Gehenna. So because we don't have that, the Yisurim, the suffering of the body, accomplishes a similar thing, that we won't have to have suffering, chas v'shalom, in Gehenna. Kumaysha Kasav Haramban, like the Nachmanides writes, back to Leperish Eiv, in his commentary to Eiv, Shafilu Yisurim Shal Eiv, Ayin Shana, even the suffering of Eiv for 70 years. Yeah? Ein Lahem Erech Klal Yisuria Nefesh Achas Begehenim has no comparison to 1 hour of the suffering of the soul in Gehenna. Because the physical fires in this world is but 1/60th of the fire of Gehenna. This world is built on kindness. So for this very reason, a mild suffering in this world can save you from severe suffering and judgment in the coming world. So when you look at it like that, a little bit of suffering here goes a long way. It's like the mashal. This is an interesting mashal. Ki mashal hiluch v'hatakas hatzel ba'aretz tefel. This is like an analogy to the movement of a shadow on earth of a handbreadth. L'fia hiluch galgal hashemesh b'rakia alafim milim, which equals the sun's movement in the sky by 1,000 miles. To explain that, for the shadow to move a drop here on earth, a shadow of something, you put a pencil up on the floor and it has a shadow. For that shadow to move, the sun had to move thousands and thousands of miles for the shadow on earth to move a hairbreadth. So same too, what we're saying is that what we're able to accomplish by some pain or some suffering here in this world accomplishes in the next world so much, gets so much of what we would have had to have gone through over there gets taken away by having some of that done here. Infinitely more so is this true in the nimshal, in the parallel. Any event that transpires in this world results from a parallel, the far more ethereal event that previously took place in the spiritual exalted worlds. So thus the effect of an event in this physical world is much greater in those lofty worlds. In other words, what happens here has a much greater effect to what's happening up on high. And therefore, a small amount of pain over here might relieve you from a lot of pain in Gehenna. We see this in the teachings of the Zohar about the elevated worlds. The Zohar explains that during the time of the sacrifices, doing a sacrifice of one fowl or a dove or a pigeon or a handful of a meal on the altar, which might seem so insignificant, right? It's just something small down here. The Zohar explains how it had a huge effect, milamayla, up on high. And the same thing is with all commandments. It's like the sun and the shadow. And going the opposite direction. When you do something small, imagine you were to move the shadow a little bit, and it would move the sun 1,000 miles. Because that's what it's like. Things on this world have a greater effect on things that are happening outside of the world, in the higher worlds. Sanctify yourself and you should become holy. You just need to be Mekadesh. You just need to sanctify yourself a little bit down here. And you become sanctified greatly, in a great measure above. And precisely this is the exact way it is in reference to reward and punishment. The reward for performing a mitzvah infinitely surpasses the physical deed itself. The punishment as well, suffered by an individual in this world for his sins, substitutes for a far greater measure of punishment that the person would have undergone had it been meted out in the world, in the coming world. So we get a lot more bang for our buck when we have punishment in this world. The schar of a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself, as it was discussed elsewhere. This knowledge is elementary to the discerning, and those who with intelligence in this matter will discover good. All right, let's do a quick recap. In Tanya, we explained how suffering in this world, the reason, yes, you should not let it put you into depression, remembering of the suffering and remembering of sins, but suffering has a big effect on saving us from suffering in the world to come, which is a much worse suffering. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. It was a pleasure to learn with you today. And Amir Hashem, I believe I will be learning with you tomorrow as well. And on Tuesday, Rabbi Bukit will be back to the class.
Question. There's no 10 o'clock thing today?
That is it. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, for the next 3 weeks, there's no 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock.
Oh.
Yep.
All right. I guess we'll have to live with that.
Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
You too. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye.